Hi and welcome everyone. I'm Stella Maylochner. I'm a principal at Credera. Credera, as I guess most of you know, is a global boutique consulting firm. We're focused on strategy, we're focused on transformation, data, and technology. Thanks for joining the webinar. We'll be talking about trust today, but start with a little introduction of myself and my two colleagues, Albert and Ellen, who are also going to be speaking on our webinar today. So myself, I've spent the past 10 years leading digital transformation across Europe and the US with a focus on automotive. So I have worked with our automotive clients to launch and scale digital business models, digital services and solutions, and also to design the internal strategies for adopting new technologies so these clients are able to build the products, go to market with it, and have the capabilities that they need to do so internally. And on every project, whether it's internal or client facing, there's one theme that keeps on surfacing, and that is trust. And that's why I'm very excited to be talking about that with you and later having a discussion with you about that on our webinar today. But before we get started, I am inviting Albert and Ellen to briefly introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Albert Cano, and I am an experienced design principal at Credera, where I lead our design practice. Over the last 20 years, my focus has been in product design, digital marketing, and enabling digital transformation through the power of design. And to Stella's earlier point, across all that work, it's clear that trust is the foundation for any type of meaningful digital experience. So I'm really excited to be here to share that experience with you today. With that, I'll pass it to Ellen.
Thank you, Albert. Hi, everybody. My name is Ellen Gates. I'm a partner in Credera's data and AI practice. And I've spent the last 20-something years of my career in data science, data strategy, data analysis, really working with clients to reshape their customer and their marketing data into ways that they can use it for really understanding the performance of their business, understanding their customers, personalization, and figuring out how to do that at scale. And I'm really excited to talk about this element of trust because the trustworthiness and safety of data is essential to to the future of automotive and to the use of AI and more advanced capabilities moving forward. So look forward to the discussion today. Thanks for joining us. Back to you,
Thank you,
Stella.
Albert. Yeah, thank you, Albert. Thank you, Ellen, for your introductions. I'm excited to hear a little bit more from you about trust building strategies in a few minutes. But before we do so, a little bit of an introduction and a perspective on why we think it makes sense to talk about trust now with everything else that is going on and why we think it actually does pay off. I would say it's almost a perfect storm that we find ourselves in within the industry right now with three forces converging. The first one is, economic volatility, tariffs, to use the not so friendly term right now, aren't just a pricing issue, but at the end of the day, they're really a signal of instability to markets and to buyers in those markets. And when these markets get shaky, our customers get cautious and get careful. So in that climate, trust really becomes a stabilizer, and it's what keeps people loyal, even when prices rise, when delivery times get out of hand, get crazy, or when brands have to shift their strategies altogether. Second, there's the rapid pace of innovation that is, mostly very exciting, but especially with AI and autonomy, is raising the stakes for trust. So we're not just asking customers to buy a car anymore. We're asking them to trust a full ecosystem of connected services, AI, database decisions, automated features. And that trust is fragile when tech doesn't feel understandable and isn't very transparent to our customers. Then third, very important, something that I'm seeing in my work, trust doesn't just depend on the product itself. It depends on how we as organizations in our organizations use technology and use data internally. Just to give you some insights from a study that was, I think, launched last week by the University of Melbourne around AI adoption. Part of that study was dealing with AI adoption in organizations, and 50% of employees apparently use AI without telling their employers. 66% rely on AI outputs without verifying the accuracy. And then the last one, probably most relevant when you think about the sensitive data that is generated by a connected car. 48% have uploaded sensitive company data into public AI tools. So that's really a trust challenge from the inside out that we have to be prepared for. I don't want to do too much Tesla bashing, but some of you might recall the incident in 2023 where there were some cracks appearing when it comes to data safety and ethical handling with employees sharing the internal camera footage and data that was generated by the vehicles. So yeah, these incidents aren't isolated incidents. I believe that public skepticism of AI and connected data in general is only going to increase, and that is also going to happen in the auto industry. So the trust conversation is coming. It's coming for sure. And I do not see one single brand that has claimed that leadership position yet. So there's both a risk, but there's also tremendous opportunity. So automotive companies who will be proactive to build trust, who will be smart about it now, can shape that narrative and can win adoption later. And if you're still not convinced that it makes sense to talk about trust, a few other data points that show that there's also a financial argument behind that. I'm really looking at it as a spectrum. If it goes very well, then you can potentially make more money charging a premium. And there are studies that show 33% of customers will pay a premium for trusted brands that they trust more. We see numbers that show that only a little increase in retention driven by trust can lead to much higher profits. For auto, very interesting, we see a strong correlation between the trust in a brand and the adoption of autonomous features. That will definitely become much more relevant. And then on the other side of the spectrum, the case that we do not want to, cases we do not want to see often, but that we also have to think about other ones where there are trust breakdowns. The Volkswagen Dieselgate affair from a few years ago is probably a good example, with I think about $30 billion as a fallout of that, and that was, to be very clear, not a technological failure. That was due to broken trust at the end of the day. So it's clear, trust isn't only a nice to have, it's critical for adoption, it's critical for loyalty, but yeah, there's a catch. Trust doesn't just happen. It's nothing that we can turn on or that we can turn off. It really is a spectrum. And it's interesting because if I say it's a spectrum, we see different types of customers. There are demographic points that are better predictors for who falls in which category. But we see over-trust on the one hand sides where people, for example, use driver-assisted features as if they were full self-driving. There have also been incidents, horrible accidents, also a lot of minor accidents where that over-trust in full self-driving was the driver of that. And then on the other hand side, we see under-trust, people not turning on features, missing out on safety benefits. We know that from our work. We know the numbers of customers that do not even opt into a free demo or a free trial of a cruise system, of an advanced driver assistance system, and yeah, if they don't even try the demo because they don't trust it, then they will probably not be interested in opting into to pay for the features. So yeah, trust calibration really is the challenge here. How do we guide our customers to trust tech the right amount and at the right time? So something that we have also seen in other industries, whether it's aviation, healthcare, progressive exposure to automation really helps build that calibrated trust. So not just throwing it out all at once, but being progressive, taking step by step, creating safe environments for people to try autonomous and innovation and other technological innovations. Yeah, and auto calibration really needs intentional design. Albert is the expert here, but just a few things up front: clear explanation, how something works, how decisions are being made, cues, trials that help build confidence slowly in low risk, low stake environments, and also setting and communicating realistic boundaries of your products. Because here in our industry, trust isn't just emotional. At the end of the day, it's really, really safety critical. And once trust breaks, it is very hard to repair in a technology. So yeah, how do we make trust operational? How within that complexity do we make it operational, not just a feeling, but a system that we can actually design for and that we can do something about as an organization? At Credera, we use what we call strategic trust framework. It really is a 5-layer approach that maps out ways to build trust across an organization. And I will very briefly walk you through these layers and then have Ellen and Albert speak to two of them a little bit more. So the first one is really internal practices and operational integrity. That's what you see on the very bottom of our model. This is really the foundation where it starts. It's about leadership, ethics, and accountability. So at Credera, we help our automotive clients build ethical and scalable operating models through Choreo, which is our offering in that regard. And we also guide AI-focused change management. So teams are equipped to use emerging technology in a responsible and in an ethical way. This is really where it starts, if I can remind you of the numbers that I shared, with the majority of employees not doing that today. The second dimension is data management, transparency, and security. That's Alan's area of expertise, but this is where where digital trust really lives. Customers want to know, what data are you collecting? How is it being used? Is there a way for me to control it? We support our automotive clients with solutions such as consent management systems, privacy dashboards, secure data clean rooms, so customers, our clients, can also share data with partners in a safe and confident way to create good customer experiences, which is is already very important and going to become much more important in a in a connected mobility ecosystem and world. Then the product dimension, pretty straightforward: reliability and safety, transparency, most important here. This is all about trust signals that your product sends. So this is really about your product doing what it is promised to do and doing that constantly. For many clients, that means ensuring that apps, portals, connected digital experiences, HMIs, work reliably together. We offer quality testing, readiness assessments, user support strategies to make sure that we're building trust on a product level. Then experience, Albert's home turf, Albert's area of expertise. It's about seamless, intuitive, and respectful engagement with customers and with their data. Trust is really calibrated in every interaction along the customer journey. There are moments that are especially important when it comes to trust building, and we help by delivering UX assessments, usability testing, trust-centered design sprints to reduce the friction and really drive trust on all of these touch points. And then lastly, communication. Well, that's not core of Credera's offering. We don't do branding. We help ensure that digital experience messaging aligns with product reality. So what is promised is really what is delivered. So it's 5 layers. It's a lot. The key really is that these layers are not optional and they are not isolated. So they reinforce or undermine each other. You can't really have a great design with having shady data practices or a really solid product which suffers because you're massively overhyping it with your messaging. Trust really needs to be integrated across all of these dimensions. And we'll continue with zooming into 2 of them. I think Albert is going to talk a little bit more about experience first, and then Ellen is going to speak about data practices. And then we're going to wrap it up and have a little bit of time left for your questions and to hear what's on your mind when it comes to trust in your automotive work. And with that, I'm handing it over to Albert.
Great. Thank you so much, Stella. It's very clear that the framework is a powerful asset to build trust in an organization. I'd like to cover a couple of areas to lay the groundwork from an experience design perspective that we look at to be able to really create trust in that digital experience. So there's two foundational areas. The first is the value of the customer experience. The second is just briefly looking at the evolving landscape and the rising customer expectations. So first, at a foundational level, the trust framework is the brand. How do we build trust in the digital experience is really shaped by the promise and the quality of the past experiences customers have with your brand. So the question, do customers trust you, can be answered by the quality of the customer experience. The better the experience, the more trust and confidence customers have in the brand. This note here, a recent J.D. Powers report shows that automotive brands that provide exceptional digital experiences see a 50% higher recommendation rate. So we can clearly see that there's that trust that's built through a great brand experience and the halo effect of that and how it impacts the business. To Stella's earlier point, considering the speed of tech evolution and the headwinds we're facing as an industry, asking customers to say yes to new experiences requires even more credibility and trust. So at the end of the day, how that translates to a great customer experience is critical to brands in the automotive experience as well. The next section, just briefly, and a lot of you, in the automotive space, has clearly seen that the evolution of technology within the cars, within the vehicle space, but also in our lives. In the early 2000s, within the car experience, there's been an emergence of infotainment systems with touchscreens and navigation and media playback, very rudimentary and isolated in terms of the experience. As it's progressed into the mid 2000s, 2018 or 2008, et cetera, we start to see the integration of different types of systems. We have personalization engines, real-time telemetry analytics, and really starting to see the growth of the ecosystem within the integration of different platforms. And now we really start to look at how the ecosystem is evolving through an omni-channel experience, being able to really start to see that they call this the vehicle to everything communication emerging, where now the potential for cars in the automotive space to be able to interact with traffic lights, the ecosystem evolving towards the autonomous vehicle support, like all these things that Stella was talking about in terms of the evolution of the different types of vehicle experience and connected to other devices and elements is really evolving. So once again, laying that foundation of the power of the customer experience with the evolution, the higher expectations that customers have for it is really giving rise to how we want to be able to approach the digital experience moving forward. So what we wanted to do is basically look at our approach to the customer experience when it comes to creating something that's really seamless and orchestrating across our different teams to deliver that. The first foundational element that we look at is clarity. Clarity is key in terms of a principle to be able to create predictable UI and UX across all the different platforms, what Stella was talking about earlier. We really want to be able to align visuals and interaction designs with the brand values and really deliver on driver expectations. And then really, really importantly, providing clear feedback loops for users to understand systems that they're working through. The next element is transparency. It's really important that customers, especially in this world of AI, know how the data is being used, offer them control whenever it comes to personalization. And personalization is really key for that one-to-one communication, but giving the customers control to be able to use those settings the way that they need to really control how personalization is leveraged for them is really critical. The next area is scalability. From a design perspective, we want to ensure that customers have a consistent experience across all the different platforms. So creating a unified design system that works not just in the app, but looks consistent on the website and the dealership experience with the touch screens or immersive, whatever that experience starts to look like within all the digital touch points, that consistency is key. Also, to be able to use, sound and haptics and motion to reinforce feedback and reassurance is really, really critical in driving that trust. So that pillar of scalability is really critical. Additionally, when it comes to scalability, we want to be able to test interactions in high stress, low connectivity areas to ensure that there's really ways for customers to experience the brand with integrity across all those touch points. The next area is inclusivity. So as we start to think about inclusivity, how what that does to instill confidence with customers is critical. We want to ensure that the digital experience is clearly universally usable. We use different methods and audits to be able to really test to make sure that the digital experience is up to speed when it comes to accessibility requirements, and also identify opportunities that we can lean in to be able to help improve those accessibility areas. Additionally, we look at multimodal interfaces when it comes to voice, touch, and textures to ensure that they're delivering at the standards that they need to optimize usability across all different types of audiences. And then finally, the last principle here we look at is cohesiveness, really thinking through the transition between the physical and the digital space and ensuring that that's a seamless handoff. That's something that we want to really take into consideration, is how we reduce friction in the experience to instill that trust that is so important in the digital space, and honestly, like what customers expect today when they work with other brands. So how do we enable this? How do we make it happen? There's four key areas here that we really start to look at to be able to enable this from an experience design perspective. The first one is really being journey driven. Customers don't interact with brands in isolation. They come to achieve a goal, and journeys we see are building blocks for sustainable growth because they connect brands to the experience. We really start to focus on customer outcomes because the organizing principle, we look at customer outcomes to be the organizing principle behind teams, technologies, budgets, and operations. So really focusing on a journey versus a feature is critical to be able to help put us in the mindset of the customer, which leads us to the next enabler, which we see as being customer centric. Having a customer-centric omnichannel approach means integrating all the touch points around the customer's needs and really getting into the understanding of their insights and what's driving them to be able to provide value. The other area that we start to think through is, in practice, what do we do to start to make that happen? How do we create an experience that feels human, reduces confusion, really interview customers to understand how they experience the features that we deliver, and then also talk to them about opportunities for us to be able to improve it. So that connection with customers is really, really critical when it comes to human-centered design and creating the most optimum type of digital experience in whatever touch point that they're in. The next area is starting to look at being future focused. From our perspective, when we talk about future focused, we really mean thinking about this through the lens of the vision of the brand and what they're trying to accomplish as a business. We really look at defining really a vision strategically with the partners that we work with to be able to understand, what the business goals are, the KPIs, really creating a shared understanding of how work is prioritized, and then setting that strategic vision that unifies the different teams that work across the different business units to align and move in the same direction. It's critical for us to be able to ensure that we don't just look at things through the customer lens, but also look at it through the brand and the vision from a business perspective, and find that overlap to really define the strategy to move forward. And then the final, and this is a tee up for Ellen, is to look at things through a performance-led lens. Really, we want to harmonize data, profiles, and technology to deliver accurate and timely results, ensuring that the customer experience is always relevant, always drives the right actions, and we really leverage data and technology to build trust through that ecosystem and consistency. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ellen to talk through the customer experience and how we apply trust to it through the data lens.
Thank you, Albert. We like to talk about the data and technology ecosystem as the back end of that customer experience and what it takes to deliver and pay off, those seamless, meaningful value driving experiences that really unlock value for our customers and make them excited about the technology and capabilities that we're providing. And we want to talk a little bit about what makes the automotive industry unique in this regard, and what kind of challenges and opportunities that presents. So first, within the data ecosystem for automotive is there's just the interconnectivity between different entities. So you have dealers or OEMs sharing data with dealers and with financing arms, and now we have the mobile apps sharing information with the vehicle itself, and how all of this data flow creates opportunities for first to, yes, you can have all of this. I mean, the opportunity to actually connect the dots between these is very powerful, but each of those handoffs creates an opportunity for data to be delayed or for information to be lost, which can disrupt that seamless experience, which hampers trust when we can't deliver on the expectations that customers have. Moreover, those data systems aren't necessarily meant to talk to each other. So they're on different speeds and different times. So if you think about the speed that data has to move within a dealer, as someone looks around a car and thinks about purchasing a car, that moves at one speed versus what's happening in the vehicle in real time and providing, information about what's in the road ahead of you. Like the scale and the speed are very different. And between all these entities, they aren't necessarily developed at the same time or as a cohesive ecosystem. And so we need to think about whether we're able to actually get the information from here to there and what it takes to provide that in a safe and meaningful way. So third, this data is moving at very different, I think I referred to this already, but kind of that scale and speed of it is very different. And so how do we make sure that we're able to accommodate all those different kinds of structures and really get all of that into alignment? Last but not least, of course, is the evolving regulatory environment. And we're all very familiar with GDPR and with the privacy regulations first coming out of California, but this is really evolving very quickly and is starting to address what we call the Internet of Things as well, which includes the automotive data, the data coming out of connected vehicles, for example, and who owns that, who has access rights to that, and the penalties that are going to play into that in the future. So all of these things together are things we have to think about specific to the context of automotive. And we're going to talk a little bit next about how that manifests as risk and what the implications are for trust. Great. So first, on the data privacy and security front, we're now collecting very personal data about where people go, about what kinds of content they interact with. And that just raises the stakes in terms of the risks for external breaches and access of data. That's something we want to be really careful about, is keeping that data safe and protected for our users. Second is the opportunity for unauthorized access. This is a little bit different, but happening within your organization or by the unauthorized sharing of that data outside. So for example, the selling of driving patterns to insurance companies, just to call one out. But really things that are done without customer knowledge about the way their data is being used, and which, once that comes to light, how that can feel in terms of their willingness to share that data and how comfortable they feel with that. And third in that space is, of course, the penalties that are now in place for violating those. So it's important. There's big legal implications, and then there's reputational risk. So all of these together, we have to find ways to really manage that data and make it usable and valuable while also keeping that safe. Now, specific to AI and the use of generative AI in particular, that's a place where, unlike previous, whether we talk about advanced analytics or data science or other techniques where interpretability was usually pretty clear, like why you get to a certain recommendation, the same isn't true for generative AI. And if you think about the kinds of problems we're solving today, you can see why. So how does a car know that you're in traffic, or that it's raining, or that there's someone crossing the street? And how do those systems then react within the vehicle? It's one thing when those things work correctly, But when they make the wrong recommendation, even as simple as, turning on your windshield wipers when it's not actually raining, and that's when you say like, oh, like this feature doesn't work, very simplest case, and that kind of thing, even those small examples erode trust. Never mind what happens when things go awry with autonomous driving. And that's not to create undue fear, but to think about how do we build in the capabilities to monitor that and to interpret that and explain what's going on. I don't want to leave out the opportunity also for bias or unethical decisioning within algorithms. So we talked earlier about financing and that kind of considerations, and those can be very important. They have legal implications, but also in terms of fairness and opportunities and what can happen with personalization there. And so to cap all that up, there's a real safety concern when it comes to violating some of these capabilities or the customer trust in automotive. With data breaches, that's very sensitive information for one. For another, there's the true safety risk within a vehicle of over trust in those capabilities that might not be warranted for self-driving, for example. But also just that risk of mismanaged expectations, and when your experiences don't pay that off, all of these things, can create that lack of trust, but there are real safety concerns as well. So there can be the negative customer experience, but also a hard cost in terms of safety. So here, how do we mitigate that? What do we need to do about it? And so there's, at Credera, when we work with our clients, we try to think about how do we break down these challenges into more meaningful components and start to address them one by one to build out that foundational capability that really allows us to unlock the power of data and artificial intelligence for our automotive clients. And first and foremost is to have a good policy framework and ensure that work with our clients to ensure that they are managing the data handoffs, that they allow the flow of data and information that drives value for customers. Albert talked about being really customer centric. How do you make sure that you have the policies that enable you to deliver the good and the benefits, but also that you have the right protections in place to manage privacy across those stakeholders? And so we talk about capabilities, maybe like clean rooms when you're sharing across entities, but also having the security protocols and safety guardrails built in. Next, we also work with our clients to talk about your tech and data foundation. So the ability of the data to get from wherever it's source system, from signals into those customer experiences is critical to be able to realize those customer experiences and to deliver on trust. And so making sure that you're able to get the data to the right person in the right format at the right time. Third, we talk about evaluation and interpretability frameworks. So this is specific to AI and making sure that you're quantifying the performance and the impact of those initiatives, and that you're thinking about how you explain why decisions are made. And that's something that kind of transparency really does support customer trust and understanding. Well, why did you think it was raining? That might be a trivial example, but really when you understand how these things work, it creates a more openness to adoption and better trust in how that will work. So we really want to make sure that we have that built in from day one, so that you can really start to talk about the benefits and the capabilities, as well as to continue to improve and refine the performance of those features over time. So last, on the user level, we want to make sure that we're providing the right level of transparency and user controls. And this is important from a customer perspective of feeling empowered to be able to go in and say what data they're willing to share or not, or for their families, what they're willing to share or not. But it's also going to become important for regulatory compliance in making sure that people can have that level of control, the data is shareable in ways that it needs to be shared and made available, and that it can be deleted and managed in compliance with customer expectations and with regulatory requirements. So if we think about kind of taking apart into the policies and the technologies and the capabilities and the transparency, we think that there's a real strong foundation and a path towards unlocking the value without creating all of the risks and really undermining trust before we actually get to value. So Stella, I think I'll pass it off to you to close us out. Formal
Yeah,
presentation.
thank you, Alan. Thank you, Albert. This was great. I'm gonna close us out and then lead us into the Q&A session. But yeah, just very quickly, I want to leave you with this. Trust is not just a technology issue. I hope that that has become clear. It's not just a marketing problem, and it's not only about compliance. It really is all of it. It cuts across the organization, from your design features to how you message them to how you train your people. So as you head back to your teams, maybe think about a few of these questions. If you're in marketing and CRM, like a lot of our clients, are we promising the right things? Are we promising what we deliver? Are our AI tools helping customers and helping build confidence? When you're in product or innovation, are we giving people the right mental models, the right understanding of what the tech actually does? If you are in tech and data, are we able to safely share data with partners or platforms without creating a risk or confusion? Or is that something that uh, oftentimes keeps us from doing the things that we actually believe are right and are going to be good for the customer and for their experience, but also for our business? And lastly, very dear to me, when you're in org leadership or change, are we equipping our teams internally to actually really use AI and data responsibly and not just in an efficient way? So if those questions already sound familiar, that is great. That's where trust really becomes a strategy, and that's where we would love to help you and also understand what's top of mind for you. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and see if we already have a few questions in the queue here. Okay. I'm looking at. Okay, so the first one, I think that's easy to answer. Will the deck be sent out after? That's, I think, one that I can take. Would say the answer is yes. We will definitely share with all participants. Let's see what else we have. Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's maybe one for Albert. I'll read it out. Where do you think trust is breaking down most in the automotive customer journey? Albert, you talked a little bit about the journey being one of the strategic frameworks that we also use to build trust strategies. Oh, you are on mute.
Great, thank you. I know I'll start. I think that what we've seen a lot is the handoff to the dealer whenever it comes to that phase of the journey. We've done a lot to be able to nurture the experience when it comes through awareness, consideration, generating leads. But then whenever it comes to that handoff, how do we ensure that there's that seamless handoff from the online to the offline experience to the dealership? So from a journey perspective, that's something that we've really started to look at, focusing on getting insights from a dealer perspective. To Ellen's point in terms of data, and I can pass it to her too, how we're integrating the data across the different platforms to be able to ensure that seamless handoff. And then also from a design perspective, looking at it through the customer lens, how does it feel whenever I'm going off online from the digital experience into the dealership, and how does my profile and what I've input in terms of preferences really seamlessly get delivered to the dealer experience and not have to have any type of repetitive information given to them once they move into that dealer experience. Ellen, do you have anything to add to that?
I think you answered that really well, Albert. But I would say that each of those handoffs that you talk about, there's a data component to that as well. Like if the data doesn't get passed along to support that customer experience, and it doesn't happen, if it gets dropped between the OEM and the dealer, for example, or even between the dealer then back to the manufacturer, like why am I getting emails that talk about new financing offers when I just bought my car, the car that I requested information from you just 2 weeks ago. So it does create those disconnects, but it's always the data is the back end of that customer experience.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Looking for more. Oh, there's another one. Okay, cool. We have one potentially for a follow-up. I like that one. So one thing that interests me greatly is the operationalization of trust through follow-up. Specifically in after-sales customer support experience, follow-up on any negative experience is crucial to trust. Any comments on this or translation to the sales dealer experience? So it's also an experience related one. I don't know. Albert, I think I can throw that one over to you, and then I can also.
Yeah, I mean, from an after-sales experience and to be able to create those communications to handle issues, is that the question? I just want to make sure I'm addressing that
I do
properly.
understand it's the role of follow-ups when you operate at the end of the day operationalizing trust, and the statement here is that in after sales it plays a significant role. What our experience is with that, and then also how it can potentially be translated to the sales and dealer experience, which I think is interesting because it goes back to those points where things break off, Albert, that you mentioned, where a customer is losing trust because they started configuring a vehicle on one end and then they're entering the dealership and the dealer just knows nothing about them. Those are these moments. But yeah, I think I sent you the question over. I trust the tool. This is more interest in myself and navigating it here, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that when it comes to, I'll have to go back and look at that process a little bit more personally and come back with a more like holistic answer. I know that just in general in the after sales, when we start to think about where that breaks down in terms of trust, there's definitely different methods and devices that we use to be able to, stay connected and be able to address it.
Cool. This could be one for you, Ellen. How are you approaching data sharing with partners while still maintaining privacy and trust? It's also a question
Yeah.
I'm interested in as a customer.
Yes. So thanks for asking. So one thing that we work on when we're talking about sharing data between two different organizations, for example, so between the OEM and the dealer, for example, one thing that we can do, what we want to think about first is that, yes, it's really important that we do hand off some of that data between so that dealers know what vehicles have been looked at, what options or preferences have been expressed to facilitate a more seamless and productive conversation within the dealership. That said, there are the dealers don't necessarily need to have a full context of everything that the OEM might know about a customer and all of those touch points. So how do you just limit it to those pieces that add a lot of value? And here's where we like to talk about data clean rooms, which are safe spaces where you can bring that data together at the user level, which is really important for making sure that the communications are tailored and personalized, but they limit the amount of data that can be shared back and forth from either one. So you don't have to have that full picture. You don't have to give full access, but really just to the key elements of it. So tools like that can be really helpful for maintaining privacy while also providing more of the value exchange of these, having the data and that connected experience.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I think we have time for maybe a last one. What trust challenges are you seeing in organizations today, whether around AI, data, or customer adoption? I think, and that also ties to what you were just talking about, Ellen, I think most of the hesitation that we are seeing is about sharing connected vehicle data across partners because teams are really worried about privacy risk, unclear consent structures. I was working with a client in CRM a little while ago, and he came from a non-auto background. He said, okay, one of the first things that I did was get a lawyer on my team. So within CRM, he has, I think, of legal experts to help them feel more confident about that. I don't know if you guys have um, any other experience, but that would be my perspective. If not, I think I can confidently offer to also ask any questions as a follow-up. We will share the materials. We are very, very thankful that you joined our webinar today. And yeah, we hope it was interesting, sparked some new thinking, and here to help and answer any of your questions. Have a great rest of your day.